Still tired.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our city council work session. We'll go ahead and get started. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Cheatham,
Yes.
Barrett,
Here.
Hazen,
Here.
Mansfield.
Here.
Rashan.
Here.
Nichols,
Here.
Black,
Here. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 2 is the Construction Board of Appeals and Review Update. Representatives from the Construction Board of Appeals and Review will discuss the board's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations. Do we have anybody here from, not. We're going to skip over 2. Looks to me like, and we're going to jump to number 3 is the CDBG Advisory Committee update. Representatives from the Community Development Block Grant CDBG Advisory Committee will discuss the committee's goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Christine Howe. I'm the Grants Manager for the Neighborhood and Community Services Division, which oversees the Community Development Block Grant. Heather, if you want to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. I'm Heather Disselkoon, and I'm currently the chair of CDBG Committee.
So I like to give a presentation for this overview, which you should all have received in your packets as well. We'll kind of try to quickly move through this and then take any questions. And I know Heather also wants to pull up a document to review with you all as well. So the CDBG Advisory Committee is the committee tasked with overseeing the city's Community Development Block Grant Program, which is an annual federal entitlement program administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. So our committee meets on the third Tuesday of the month and is composed of 7 members, the majority of whom need to be residents of our core neighborhoods, which you can see delineated on the map there. We have the Alameda, Bonneville, College, Mountain View, formerly known as Whittier neighborhood, Lewis and Clark, and then the neighborhoods of historic Old Town, which they've kind of subdivided into various groups. Our members serve 3-year terms, and I will just put a plug in that currently we only have 3 members on the committee, so we have 4 vacancies if anyone is interested in serving, particularly from these neighborhoods. We're always looking to get more people involved, and hopefully if anyone's interested after this presentation, they can reach out to the mayor's office and potentially serve on the committee. The committee's responsibilities include reviewing and voting on subrecipient applications for CDBG funds. I will say that is the bulk of the activity that the committee does throughout the year. In addition, they assist in creating the 5-year consolidated plan, which is the overarching plan that governs CDBG. It's kind of like our strategic plan to determine how we can use those federal entitlement funds. And then each year we pass and approve an annual action plan. And the activities that we fund for that annual action plan come out of some of these subrecipient applications. And the committee also assists with project planning and oversight throughout the year. So if we have a project that needs change, or if we have additional funding that comes in for whatever reason, the committee helps provide guidance as to how to use that funding. And finally, they also assist with Fair Housing Act activities, including education and outreach. So the CDBG program has been around since the 70s. The city has been an entitlement community since 1997. And primarily, we implement programs that help our low to moderate income residents. In some general project areas that covers housing projects, public infrastructure, like sidewalks, public facilities, such as the Senior Activity Center, any public services that will help low to moderate income residents, and then, of course, our admin and planning. As mentioned, we adopted a new consolidated plan last year, and so it covers our program years of 2022 through 2026. This chart here I wanted to include so you could get a sense of how the CDBG program year operates. Our program year begins in April and ends in March, so it doesn't align with the federal fiscal year or the city's fiscal year, which makes for kind of an interesting overlap of activities. We are required by HUD to submit our annual action plan 45 days prior to the program start, which is February 15th. And that's why, for those of you who have been on the council, know that I come to you in January with the annual action plan for approval, and we have public hearings on it in the winter. Unfortunately, HUD isn't always on time with the release of funds, so often we have to wait for HUD to release our entitlement amount before we can submit our annual action plan. But the process for that includes a technical assistance meeting in August, and that's where we can invite our nonprofit stakeholders to come to a meeting and learn about CDBG and the types of activities we can fund. After that, we conduct a public needs hearing to find out what the community needs are for that particular program year. We have our nonprofit agencies that are interested in applying submit their applications by the end of October. And our advisory committee meets and reviews those applications. It typically takes a few meetings for them to review all the applications and invite finalists in for interviews. After that, the advisory committee comes up with a funding recommendation, and we have a public hearing on that. And that's at one of your council meetings. And then the city council approves the funding recommendation or approves it with changes, and we submit that to HUD, and then our program year can begin. As mentioned, the program year is slated to begin April 1st, but it typically begins sometime in the late spring or summer based on when HUD releases those funds and approves the plan. It's kind of a lengthy process that involves a lot of public outreach, but that's part of the purpose of these HUD programs, is to ensure that citizens are participating, particularly those citizens that will be the recipients of the federal funding. So in program year 22, HUD awarded us just over $425,000 in entitlement funding. This did represent a reduction from the previous program year of just over 7.5%. And knowing our needs and the lack of available funding for a lot of our public service agencies, that is quite a substantial decrease. But we were able to fund these various programs. So across the top, you can see those are our project areas, which are part of our consolidated plan. And then within each of those categories, we funded various activities. So we were able to help a number of public service agencies and do quite a bit of programming, but it is a limited amount of funding. And so as you may recall, this program year 22 ended March 31st of this year.
Christine,
Yes.
are you going to talk about why? Do you know why we got such a reduction?
There's a few things that could create the reduction. My understanding is that the federal government level funded the CDBG or the HUD programs. However, every year new entitlements are added to the mix. So once a city reaches certain qualifying factors, they can become a CDBG entitlement community. And so with the level funding, that just stretches the funds thinner because you have more entitlements. Other factors that could affect it are major changes in population. So if our LMI percentage, our low to moderate income resident percentage, were to dramatically change, that could affect our appropriation. We didn't see any dramatic changes after the 2020 census, so that didn't seem to be a factor. So my thinking is that it is just because of those funds being stretched thin.
More cities entering the program.
Right. HUD did put funding toward other programs that are sort of competitive grant programs. So as we maybe see this trend continue with CDBG, there's other ways we can try to get funding to support our low to moderate income populations. One example is our Lead Safe and Healthy Homes program, which is a competitive grant. So we use that to, supplement and add to our programming to help the LMI populations, because CDBG is kind of, it's up to the whim of, the federal budget.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
So I'll just some highlights on our accomplishments, and you can read through these. But we were able to provide the match to that Lead Safe and Healthy Homes program, as I mentioned. CDBG is one of the few federal funding sources that can serve as a match for some of these grants. Typically, federal grants don't allow you to use other federal funding as a match. But this allows us to leverage the CDBG funding in a way that we can, we have over $2.5 million from that lead grant. So we've been able to use a small portion of CDBG every year to leverage that lead funding. In addition, we provide grants to NeighborWorks Pocatello, and they were able to do a mobile home repair program. And NeighborWorks' program is really important for those mobile homeowners because they also provide loans. Because mobile homes are not real estate property, you can't secure a loan in the same way you would as a lien on a property. So NeighborWorks provides these unsecured loans to these folks who otherwise may not have funding to complete extensive repairs. So this is a great program for those folks. In addition, under the housing category, we provided some rental unit rehab assistance to the Housing Authority. That is still in progress, and this would allow them to turn units faster so that they could get them re-rented out in between vacancies. And finally, the city conducts its internal renewal housing rehab small grant and loan program, in which we provide grants up to $5,000 for homeowners and mobile homeowners, and then loans for homeowners to complete necessary repairs on their homes. Under public services, we provided assistance to a number of agencies, and this is the result of that application process where we review the applicants and distribute funding based on what they've applied for and how many beneficiaries and how many folks it will help through their programming. Our need for public services always exceeds what we have available for funding. HUD caps the public service allocation at 15% of our total entitlement, so we do hit a hard stop on how much we can award through the public service program. But we were happy to be able to help a number of our local nonprofit partners. And in terms of public facilities, we're still completing the 5-year agreement with Aid for Friends, and that's for acquisition of the new shelter. So we contribute $50,000 annually through our program year 2025, which goes toward that partial acquisition, which helped them construct the new shelter. In addition, St. Vincent de Paul had got a small facilities grant for some lighting infrastructure on their facility, which allows for safer access to their food bank. For public infrastructure, we completed, or one sidewalk project is in progress because of the weather, but we have 2 individual sidewalk projects that were approved this year, and we were able to put about $20,000 into individual sidewalks. And those are for folks who are low to moderate income and can qualify individually. We also have sidewalk money into the neighborhood sidewalk program, and this is the project we've been working on with PRT to leverage their Federal Transit Authority funding with CDBG as a match to invest quite a bit into the neighborhoods around the city that qualify as low to moderate income areas. So right now our focus is on the Bonneville neighborhood, and we've identified that area based on some sidewalk surveying and the presence of low to moderate income residents. Other neighborhoods that we've identified include those in Old Town. And so as we continue through the neighborhood sidewalk program, we'll identify various sectors around the city that we can invest this funding in. Essentially, we'll just do as much as we can until we run out. And then for admin, typically this is what we use for our personnel expenses, but we were also able to do a couple of admin projects. One was to contribute toward NeighborWorks Pocatello's LIHTC application for their Park Meadows senior housing development over on South 5th, which is been under construction for a while, so if you have a chance to drive by, you'll see that is coming up quickly. And then we also provided some funding to the Housing Authority for a fair housing training. Through the CARES Act, we were able to receive additional CDBG funding, so that allowed us to do our rental assistance program and some public services. We did exhaust the rental assistance program funding last summer, and as you can see, there was quite a bit of need there. But fortunately, the state had a program that we were able to refer folks to once our funding was exhausted. But that CARES Act funding was critical investment into the community to respond to, prepare for, and prevent some of the COVID impacts. And so there's just a breakdown of some of the service agencies that we provided some CDBG CARES Act funding to. And looking forward to program year 23, which we are technically in the middle of, we have a number of funds dedicated to the various project areas, and just highlighting here that our HUD allocation for CDBG was reduced yet again in program year 23 by an additional almost 8%. So that's just about 70,000 over 2 years. And that makes it quite challenging to be able to fund all the projects that come before us. But we do try to leverage some additional funding, as you saw with the lead program and FTA. In this last slide, which you can look at more in depth, just to highlight at the bottom, you can see the difference between the entitlement appropriation and our requests. So about 70,000 in requests came in excess of what we could actually fund with the entitlement. So just to highlight that there is a demand there, particularly from our public service agencies. So the CDBG Advisory Committee works really hard to review those applications and make a funding recommendation that supports not only the consolidated plan, but also the needs in the community. So now I'll pull up our application, which Heather wanted to share with folks.
Yes, thank
Or
you.
the,
Good morning. I just wanted to take an opportunity to highlight what I feel is one of the biggest accomplishments, but doesn't appear on these slides, and because this is what appears, what happened behind the scenes. We have a new scoring tool, and we owe this scoring tool to staff, to the lady seated to my right and to Lisa Smith, and this was a game changer for us. Last year, the score, as you can imagine, when you have these requests come in and you have a limited amount of money, it is so difficult to choose which programs we recommend awards to and how much. The scoring tool that we had a year ago, which was my first year going through this process, was a one-pager. We would have, I think there was like maybe 6 categories. I'm trying to remember back over a year ago. You could award 0 points if the answer was no, full points if it was yes, and then the in-between was like points 1 to 19. It was so subjective and it made it so difficult. This scoring tool, like I said, is a game changer for us because it has removed as much, I mean, there's still going to be some subjectiveness to these decisions and these recommendations, but it has removed a lot of that and made it easier as we have new members come in or going through this process to be able to follow along. It gives you clear delineations as to how you score the particular categories. It's all weighted based on categories such as whether the proposed project meets national objectives and the consolidated plan goals, how well does it serve the priority populations and needs, the actual community providers' activity management and implementation, what is our history with them, do they have the means to be able to, because there's a lot of paperwork involved and that goes on beyond the awards that these ladies deal with in the department. And then their readiness to proceed. Are they ready to go forward with this grant? Can we get it done in the allotted amount of time? To the left, you'll see some, in the yellow column there, some designations. All of that was also tied to a revamped application. So it makes it so easy for the committee members, as they're going through the scoring sheet, to be able to go back to the application and find the specific portion of the application that applies to that scoring area. And so I just wanted to let you know that, you know, as a committee, we're doing as much as we can. We use these rankings then to make the decision. And this year, I don't know what Christine thought, but I thought it went so much smoother because so much of our work is within a 2 to 3 week period where we listen to the applicants and we look through their applications, and there's a lot of work in those 2 to 3 weeks. And this just made it so much easier, and it just felt like this, as much as the subjectiveness that we could remove was removed. So then when it came down to having those conversations, we were able then to look at those scores and use that towards the decision-making process. So we are very appreciative towards staff. That was a lot of work to coordinate both the scoring sheets and the new application. And I think going forward, the recommendations that come to you, I think you can rest assured that, you know, we have tried to make the best recommendation for the community and for the use of that money.
Mr. Mayor,
Great, yes,
may I ask a question, please?
absolutely.
Does each member of the committee then individually score these, and then you get together and put your scores together, or how does that happen?
Yes, what we did last year is there's another spreadsheet that we then gave our scores to Christine to input so that it would then calculate, and I believe it averaged them as well.
Yeah, we each, at the end of each score sheet, so each, to answer your question, yes. So each member of the committee, I sent these as PDFs that you could fill in, or if they wanted hard copies. So for each application that met all of the initial eligibility criteria and was submitted as a final application, they would each take, 5 of these score sheets and score the 5 applications, and then we all got together, entered that summary data into the spreadsheet, and then we're able to kind of see where the applicants ranked and then have a discussion about it. As Heather mentioned, some of these are still subjective, so the score isn't necessarily the end-all be-all for whether you'll get funding or not, but helps inform and guide that service agency funding. Particularly as we noted in the PowerPoint, the requests for service funding were about 100,000, and we only had 65,000 that we could give grants. And so this just helps kind of organize it all. In the past, it wasn't very clear on the scoring tool exactly how to rank the answers. As Heather mentioned, you could score 0, between 1 and 19, or 20 points for 6 questions. And I think what's also beneficial about this is the agencies that are applying for the funding also see the application and can see if they want a copy of the scoring tool. I provided that, so they can manage their expectations. They know what to respond to and what they're going to be scored on. So if they have 10 years experience managing these grants, they know that they're going to score well there. If they have 1 year, they know that, okay, this is maybe not, I didn't get as many points in this category. So it manages their expectations as well.
Follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
Was there much diversity in responses, or does the committee in general score roughly the same throughout the group?
I think because some of the questions that weren't as subjective, there were similar responses, but everybody, it seemed, had a different perspective and used their experience and insight to fill out the score tool. And there was good discussion on each of the applications. We do interview, we have the applicants that are the finalists come in and present their application, which I think also helps inform the decision-making, because they can then ask questions where there isn't, if there's something that needs clarification outside of the scoring tool, so.
Thank you.
Super, Councilmember Nichols.
Yeah, so what is the greatest need you're seeing in the community?
It's a good question. I think it's always going to be, right now, housing, for sure. And not just housing in terms of lack of housing, but the ability to get into and stay in an affordable housing living situation. We have a lot of folks who are kind of being bumped out, and there's no resources there to help pay for maybe past due rent or the security deposit and first months, last months that comes with getting into some housing. And unfortunately, CDBG can't be used to construct housing. So trying to play catch up with that is a real challenge. And then folks that then, don't have stable housing, that's when we see the need for all those other services to come into play. So then you start needing all your other social supports, which need to be there anyways to maintain the stability, but housing definitely comes up as the number one. And you'll notice that a lot of our public service grants do support all of that, kind of those other social services that come with that housing need.
So how short are we in fulfilling that need?
That's probably a better question for the Housing Authority for specific numbers. But I have talked to Sarah Van Cleve about this, and I think, as a region, our goal through our Homeless and Housing Coalition is to construct at least 17 affordable units this year. The state, through their homeless and housing coalitions through IHFA, has a goal of 100 units for the whole state of Idaho. But I know that our voucher request for Section 8 vouchers is well in excess of what we actually have available. I think we have about 700 vouchers, don't quote me on that number, with a much longer waiting list. But of those vouchers, we don't have enough units to even be able to fill all the existing vouchers. So it's almost like the waiting list is doubled. So You'll have to get probably more specific numbers, concrete numbers from the Housing Authority. I'm not certain on the exact shortfall.
Okay. And then one other question. On the loan programs that we have, I'm guessing that some of those loans are paid back. And is that right? Does that go into some type of a revolving loan fund that we're able to then reuse the proceeds?
Sort of. So that's what contributes to what we call program income. So program income is any income generated from things such as the loans that we provide. Our loans are typically partially deferred with a payable portion. And that payable portion right now is a 0% interest. And the loan program essentially, we don't have to do them as loans. They could be straight grants. But we find that there's better participation and buy-in from the homeowner if it is a loan. It gives them some skin in the game, so to speak. But since they could be straight grants, we're not looking to charge a high amount of interest. So we do get small amounts of program income monthly, and then when someone sells their home or maybe refinances, that whole portion is due upon that change. So we will sometimes get an influx of funding that goes back into the renewal program for additional loans. So it's not self-sustaining. So we do need to provide CDBG funding annually into that program.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Mansfield.
Two questions that are follow-ups to Councilmember Nichols. The first one, just since we were talking about it, with the loans, you said that there was a payable versus a deferred section of or portion of that loan. How do you determine how much of that?
So we have a calculator that uses both like their credit score and their low to moderate income percent and any other outstanding debts and their debt to income ratio.
So it's an objective measurement. Well, it's based on objective measurements.
Yes.
Okay.
And if there are extenuating circumstances where someone, needs an exception, we have a credit committee composed of staff that can review that and vote on changes. But typically we just use we have a form, so it is objective.
Okay. That's
I
great.
don't have to manually do all the math. In the
Great.
background. The spreadsheet does it for us.
The second question that I had, I know this, again, probably closer tied to the housing side, but I think you probably see the residual effects of it. You spoke of the shortfall in the housing and kind of the consequences of it. In your department, do you feel like it's trending the right way or the wrong way? Is it getting better or is it getting worse still?
I think there was a big issue right when COVID started. And then all of this emergency funding that came in helped people, have some stable housing. And now that all those programs are ending, we're getting back to where we were kind of right when the pandemic started.
Okay.
And that's direct feedback we get from the nonprofits. They're always, in the calls we get in the office, people are looking for that rental assistance or some kind of program to help them, and there really aren't any resources for that kind of thing out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Thank you very much, Heather. Thank you for volunteering your time. I know it's a lot of work, and so thank you very much for doing what you do there. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 4 is Fire Union Quarterly Update. Representatives from the Pocatello Fire Union will give the council an update of activities for the past quarter.
All right. Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jordan Van Every, Pocatello Firefighters, Local 187. I think I'll just start off today by kind of talking about some stuff that we did over the holidays. So a lot of what we are able to do as far as giving to the community, we have a fund that's called the Pocatello Firefighters Public Assistance Fund, and it's a 501c3 charity. And our members donate into that fund every month, and it just builds, and so we're able to use that money to kind of fulfill some needs that we see in the community. I've got a report here of a couple of things that we did with that money. One of our largest donations was to the First Congressional Church. There's a warming shelter in the basement of that. One of our members was there on a call, and he determined that they could use a little bit of help, and so we reached out to him. we were able to donate $2,500 to them to kind of help them get through the coldest part of the winter. I believe that they bought cots and beds, blankets, and food for people that were in need of that warming shelter. So that was a larger chunk of our donation that went to those guys. And I personally visited that warming shelter a few weeks after that donation was made. And everyone was in really good spirits and things were looking very positive there. So just being able to see that change and that they used our money to help their program was really great. We had Highland High School Christmas fundraiser that we were able to donate $1,000 to, and I believe that they identified some families that they could purchase gifts for through the high school with that money. We donated $500 to Aid for Friends, which is kind of a revolving donation that we do every year just to kind of give back to those guys for what they do, help them out a little bit. We donated $500 to the food bank, and then through a fundraiser that Linda was doing, we were able to donate $80 to SECA, $80 to the Boys and Girls Club, $80 to Family Service Alliance, $80 to the NAACP, and $80 to the Elks Lodge. On all of our fire apparatus, the union has placed an envelope that contains $50. And so if we're ever out in the community on a call and somebody is in need of a little bit of assistance, we're able to take that money out of our fire apparatus. We agree as a crew to donate that money. And in doing that, since October of last year, we donated about $1,500 to 11 families that were displaced by fires. And we donated about $600 of that to people out in the community, just general needs, groceries, clothing, fuel for their vehicle, blankets for homeless people, things like that. All in all, from October of last year to right now, we've donated $7,000 out of that. We call it the PIF Path Fund. So it's just a really nice way for us to be able to give back to the people that we serve on a daily basis. One of the other events that we participate in every year is the Leukemia Lymphoma Society Stair Climb, which is a fundraiser for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. The event is held in Seattle. During COVID, it was kind of off and on, hit and miss. They really didn't have the event, but they still had the fundraiser and a couple of different things for the members that were participating in that to do. The event was actually held last month on the 12th. We had 9 members attend, and the union was able to sponsor their trip, pay for their hotels to that event. The team has raised $9,760 so far for that fundraiser between 9 people. All in all, this year, that fundraiser has raised $2.1 million for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And since the inception of the fundraiser, they've raised over $20 million for that society. They are still raising funds for that. The fundraiser kind of runs over the event a little bit. And there's an event coming up on April 29th at the Star Out Brewery. It's from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. And Andy Moldenhauer, I'm sure most of you guys know Andy, he will be smoking some meat and providing some delicious Dutch oven sides. So if you guys are able to, should be a pretty good time. And the proceeds for that fundraiser are going to go into that stair climb fundraiser as well. So as far as fundraising goes, as far as that stuff goes, that is about where we were at with the last quarter. One thing that I kind of want to take this opportunity to bring to attention is something that's kind of been in the forefront of our minds recently. It's been a big push from the international union, the International Association of Firefighters, and that's I won't say the recent discovery of PFAS in our firefighting bunker gear, but it's raising more of an awareness to that. So for those of you that don't know what PFAS is, I had to look it up this morning. It's polyfluoroalkyl substance. So it's known as a forever chemical, and studies have linked that PFAS to cancer and other health-related effects, most of which are related to behavioral development, metabolism, the circulatory, digestive, endocrine, immune, neurologic, and reproductive system. So it's basically found everywhere. All of us probably have it in our bloodstream or in our body already. So kind of the bad part about the gear that we wear is it has really high levels of that in that gear, higher than what most of us are exposed to on a daily basis. And we're just now seeing that research that shows that firefighters typically have a higher level of these PFAS chemicals in their bloodstream. So the reason why these are in our gear is they provide a water barrier, which is required by the NFPA to have that water resistant property. They provide resistance to heat and oil, stains and grease. So, and they're absorbed by our skin when we sweat. So as soon as we put on our bunker gear, I mean, just thinking about me putting on my turnout gear is making me sweat. So as soon as we put that stuff on, it doesn't breathe. We start sweating. We're absorbing that stuff into our body. And not only that, the PFAS can kind of, shed off of the material and we can inhale and ingest it, which is how we all have it in our system. It's a fairly prevalent chemical out in our environment. So what are we doing to kind of prevent this or make it less prevalent or reduce our exposure to it? We're working with the international, we're working with our chiefs, we're working as a department to kind of come up with some best practices for now. Unfortunately, whenever new firefighting gear comes out, it has to go through extensive testing to make sure that it's safe for us to put that stuff on, to make sure it's going to do its job out in the field. So we're doing our best to make sure that we're taking care of some of these issues in our stations. We're not allowing that bunker gear inside the station. We're cleaning the rigs on a regular basis. If we're transporting in our personal rigs, we're making sure that they're in a bag or a container that's sealed up. We're minimizing our exposure to the turnout gear by only wearing them on calls where we actually need the protection that the turnout gear provides or has the potential to need that, or have the potential to need that gear. And we encourage everybody, we're raising awareness to this issue. There are companies out there that are starting to develop PFAS-free gear. So that's on the horizon, but it's going to take a little bit to get all that stuff through testing. So we're kind of keeping our eyes on that. And as soon as we can start phasing out what we call the legacy gear or the older turnout gear. So we just kind of want to bring that kind of into the forefront of your minds a little bit. That's something that we're working on to make sure our members are safe and healthy, as well as being able to provide our service to the community by keeping our members safe and healthy.
Jordan, we have a question for you.
Sure.
Josh?
How often do you guys rotate out that gear? So for example, as this stuff gets released, how just on a let's say you just continued your regular rotation of your gear, how long would it take? Let's say the stuff became available today, right? It's approved. You can buy it now. It's same price, no difference. It's just better for you. How long would it take just to go through the natural cycle?
I'm not sure exactly how long it would take, but every 5 years we replace our turnout gear. So you wear your current turnouts for 5 years. Maybe
So
Ryan might
the
know.
chief was back there with his hand up.
5 years.
Every 5 years.
Every 5 years we replace a person's gear.
That's
Okay.
our rotation is on about a 5-year calendar. We budget a certain amount every year. And over the course of 5 years, we're able to buy a new set of turnouts for every firefighter.
And so it's kind of a revolt, like every year people are getting new.
You're doing
new
a
bunker
fifth
gear.
of it approximately. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and then I've got Brent, and then I've got Scott, and then I got Linda.
So what is turnout gear?
So you've probably seen us out in the community. They're the tan coats
Yellow
and
stripe.
pants that we wear, as well as our helmet. So if we're ever on a fire and we're dressed up, that's our turnout gear, the stuff that we're going to use to go into fire. So I guess I should preface this by saying the turnout gear is still our best protection when we go into fires and when we're on those hazardous calls. So there's still a lot of really nasty things that we encounter on a daily basis inside of fires, and the turnouts are still providing us that barrier from that nasty stuff.
So do you know if there are any type of standards or regulations that control the amount of PFAS materials that can be in a product, like?
I don't know. So currently there's kind of a fight between the NFPA and the International Union, the International Association of Firefighters. We've known that PFAS are bad for us for a long time, but they have kind of just continued to allow them to be in our gear. And I can't answer if there's a regulation that allows that.
All right. Thank you.
I've got about 10 jokes about firemen sweating.
So, well,
Here's
is
my
that
question.
Is that what you want to do, is tell jokes right now? This is comedy hour, or?
With your this is something new, right? I mean, over the last few years,
Yeah.
this has come out. So I know that you get a physical every year. Is this something that we're testing for, that we're looking at our firefighters every year and going, dude, you got a problem, right? Because it's way high in you, maybe not here, something that, if it is bad, we can get a jump on it. Is there a specific test that we're looking at during those physicals? And if there's not, is there something that we need to do to get that done?
I don't believe currently that's part of our current blood work. I don't know the cost associated with that. I don't imagine that.
We probably need to find out.
We probably do.
Yeah, right.
And I imagine that something like that is probably coming.
Okay,
So
perfect.
Is there a remedy for it, though, once we find out? Or do we know yet? What?
there's still a lot to be determined.
Okay.
And like I said, it's in everybody. From what I understand, it's hard to get rid of. That's why it's called the forever chemical. It's in everything that we're around every day.
If it's elevated in firefighters because of the gear, then
Right.
I'm just wondering if
So-
there's anything that.
I don't know. There's still a lot of research to be done that way. So we're just kind of delving into this.
Keep on top of it so we can react
we
when we
will.
need to.
Yep.
Linda?
And like Scott, I also was gonna joke about sweating, but I won't. But I was kind of thinking along the lines of what you were just talking about, sort of, is what do we know about what we can do? And I guess what can the council do? We just wait to hear from you about what the needs are gonna be and how we can address this?
I think
or-
that's probably where we're at now. They're still working on research. I was just looking at the International's recommendations, and they're very similar to what we already do. Minimizing exposure until we can get those PFAS-free turnouts in.
And then we would look at budget decisions related to those and
Yeah.
phasing those
I
in.
mean, I think
and-
that we're on a pretty good track right now to get them phased out.
Okay.
We do a really good job of making sure guys have good current gear. And so I think that that's kind of already in place. And we'll just see. I've seen a few things, a few companies that are right there with their gear. They're just waiting on that NFPA stamp of approval before they can actually get it out to people.
I was also interested in the testing idea, if that can be added to
And we
the
can-
blood work
we can
that you get.
definitely-
And
we can definitely look into that with our department physician and see if that's something that he's aware of or if he knows anything about.
it's like all the stories and documentaries and everything you see on Teflon, and just
It's the same.
it's in everybody. It's the same thing, and it's kind of horrifying. On a different note, I also wanted to thank you for all the other work that you're doing in the community, the charity work and the donations and the help that you provide. And a personal thank you, because several of those donations were for my walking fundraiser, and I really appreciate the support for that. And I'm glad we got it done before I was not able to walk anymore. So thank you.
And we definitely want to donate that money. So if you see any needs, if you have any ideas, bring them to me, and we'll make sure that we get those addressed.
Sounds good. Okay, I've got Josh again.
Yeah, just one follow-up question on the new gear. Have you seen prices? Is it similar?
That's about this high above my pay grade. That might be. They haven't released anything yet. They've just kind of
Okay.
been like, they give you like the movie teaser.
Sure.
Like, here's the new stuff, but
Okay.
so nothing yet that I've
Chief,
seen.
do we know? Sorry.
He has the right pay grade, so.
Thanks for the question, Councilmember Ryan O'Hearn, Fire Chief. So we've, for a while, have been really monitoring this and trying to implement best practices. And this really started a few years ago with the foam that we use for aircraft firefighting at the airport. That was the first exposure about 3 years ago to this concept of PFAS. And so we've implemented measures to limit our exposure out there. They are starting to turn out a replacement foam now, and it is much more expensive than the current foam, as you can imagine. And I would anticipate, even though we haven't seen any pricing for this new gear, that it would follow in that same vein, particularly early on. Generally it would be the new technology, and then as everybody implements that technology, you would maybe see that price come down, but we're guessing that it's probably going to be fairly expensive.
That's what I'm worried about.
Currently, a set of turnouts for an employee is about $3,500, and it's a thermal barrier protective system that protects you from heat and water and other things. It even has a vapor barrier as well. And so that is the best, the only clothing that enables our firefighters to go into a burning structure to search for life and to help people. And so it still is a necessary component of our protective equipment. But we do look forward and want to act as quickly as we can once there is a replacement out there.
How many sets of turnouts do you guys have? How many firefighters need them?
We have 78 line personnel, and so we purchase about 15 sets per year. That's about that 5-year rotation that we have.
All right. Thank you.
Corey?
So with the symptoms that we're seeing here, is there, like with the National Association or the International Association, are they seeing like a spike in these different symptoms, or how is this being tracked?
I don't think that there has been a huge spike. We're already exposed to a lot of things that can cause cancer or that cause cancer that are known. And I think that part of it has been tracked. And I think that maybe they're starting to see that not only are those causing the issues, but our gear has potentially been causing them also. So it's only been in the last few years that this has really come to light. So I'm sure that there's a little more tracking of that's going on. But again, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because of everything that we're already exposed to over and above our gear. So.
Awesome. One last thing, like Linda, I want to thank you for showing up to my event. We had that Easter egg hunt, and you guys came out. No donations were required, and time I feel like is just as equally as important as money. And seeing those kids' faces light up, being able to climb through the rig and have you guys show them how the hoses work and how all the gear and everything works, I think that was extremely amazing. And so I appreciate you guys doing that and you taking the charge on that. So thank you.
Anytime.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I've got two more. I've got Brent and then Rick.
So regarding the 501c3 nonprofit that you mentioned, is that a local public charity or a national organization?
It's our local.
It's your
Yep,
local.
It's completely run by us.
Okay, so, and what is its name?
It is the Pocatello Firefighters Public Assistance.
And-
Public Assistance.
And can anyone donate to that?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, while this discussion's been going on, I looked up PFAS just to see exactly what is said about it. EPA banned that starting in 2015. It's no longer manufactured or imported in the United States.
But it's in all of us.
98% of the population will test positive, but not going forward. According to what I'm reading from EPA, it's been eliminated. So I would think if we're replacing our gear every 5 years, we should be past the stage where the gear that is on hand contains PFAS.
And I think that's the issue that we're up against right now. Somehow it's still getting into our gear and being manufactured into our gear. And I think that stems from the requirements that our gear has to meet. And I don't know. I don't have the answer for that.
Well, it's something for probably that we just need to follow up on and see what's happening. If it's no longer able to get into the country, like Rick was saying, and the gear is made in the U.S., then eventually it will be out of the gear anyway. And so maybe, hopefully, we're at that spot where we're going to start seeing a decline in the gear.
I hope so.
And so that would be good. So this is going to be kind of a crazy question in my mind. But Scott asked the question, Councilmember Marchand asked the question about testing and the blood work and stuff. Is that something that we're going to have an issue with negotiating with the union, or is it going to be a fairly easy process for the union to say, yeah, we need to test for this? And
I would imagine it should be pretty straightforward.
okay, would you know if it would? And maybe I need our HR. Would it need an MOU to make an adjustment there, or?
We would probably have to look into that.
Okay, seems to me like I'd like to know sooner than later if I had elevated, and so anyway, okay, that would be great. And thank you for everything that you're doing, that you have done. I know that warming shelter, every year when it gets really cold, we start talking warming shelters. And right now we're in the process of, I've got a group that we're talking cooling shelters right now. And we've been talking cooling shelters for a few months. And so it seems backwards when it's freezing cold out that we're talking about cooling shelters. But in the summertime, we'll start talking about the warming shelters again. And so it's definitely something needed. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Yep,
you guys.
thank you. Okay, we'll move to agenda item 5 is our police union quarterly update. Representatives from the Pocatello Police Union will give the council an update on their activities for the past quarter.
Thank you, Mayor Ballard, Councilman. My name is Stephanie Harris. I am the Vice President of the union representing the civilians, and with me is President Zach Barchi. The Pocatello Police Union and its members participated in several community fundraisers, created recognition for the department members, and gave back to the community by volunteering time. During the month of November, we participated in Give the Cop a Bird fundraiser, where 140 turkeys and $6,210 was collected and donated to the Idaho Food Bank to provide families in need with a Thanksgiving meal. In the month of December, union members participated with the local first responders with the Shop a Cop event, and they were also able to use $5,500 in donations received from the annual Turkey Bowl and the Secret Santa programs to assist with 23 different families associated with the Pocatello Chubbuck School District to provide Christmas for those families.
Stephanie, how many families?
23
23.
23
Great.
different families. Union members participated in the Pocatello Christmas Nights Light Parade held in historic downtown. This also gives the officers the ability to interact with community members in a time of celebration and strengthening the relationships and developing new ones. In February, the union, working with senior staff members, implemented the Pocatello Police Support Professionals Week. During this week, civilian members of the police department, this included records, stenos, evidence techs, crime analysts, victim witness coordinator, The quartermaster and the chief secretary were all recognized for their hard work and their contributions. Nationally, law enforcement has their week. We as dispatchers have our week, and our support staff who contribute to us have never been recognized. And so we created this week for them. They were given treats. Senior staff cooked them lunch. And they also received small gifts throughout the week just to recognize them and to thank them for their contributions. And this will be an annual event for us, happening in the first week of February for us as we go forward, recognizing those individuals that contribute to our department.
Mr. Mayor, may I
Okay,
interrupt?
we got Rick and then Josh.
Who's support staff?
So our support staff are civilians that their records division, our stenos, our evidence techs, our quartermaster, all of those individuals that are not law enforcement, like officers or dispatchers. It's everyone else in our department that contributes. Without them, we could not do our jobs.
Thank you.
What percentage of your department is made up of that support staff? Or number of employees roughly? Do you have any ideas off the
I
top of your head?
believe there were 26 that we supported for that. Of the total number, I'm not sure how many of the total
Sorry.
numbers.
Yeah.
No, of the department. that
We bought specific things, so there's 26 that participated.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I know that number off the top.
No,
of my
that's great. That's a great number. Thank you. I just wanted an idea of how many.
Yeah, I thought it was about 30-ish.
Okay, I just wanted an idea of how many people we're talking about.
And that
so.
fluctuates with records and stenos
Sure.
and some part-time people that come and go.
Yeah.
But there were 26 that
Great.
we
Thank you.
provided things for.
Yeah,
this
awesome.
current. For Dispatch Appreciation Week, which is currently going on right now, it runs the 9th through the 15th. The union was able to purchase a portable treadmill that we can have inside of the center. So we can actually walk while we're working, and that contributes to our physical health and our mental health, because we can't always get up and walk around and walk away from situations. But if we can, we're pretty good at multitasking, so if we can walk and talk and answer the phones and do those things. Union members also participated in Chalk the Walk this last week. That is a event that Family Service Alliance puts on. Union members wrote messages on the sidewalk and drew pictures to provide support and bring hope to those that are victims of sexual assault. The Pocatello Police Department is currently hosting the Pocatello Police Citizens Academy. It is an 8-week program that allows citizens to learn about all aspects of law enforcement. And the instructors for the academy are all our highly trained officers, our dispatchers, and our support staff. We as a union have made donations. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, what's the date on the academy?
The academy is 8 weeks, and I do believe it started last week.
Started last week.
Last Tuesday, I think it started.
Yeah, it was supposed to start the week before, but we had quite the snow, so it got canceled. And Tuesday was the first day.
And again
2
today.
inches.
You were really optimistic earlier when you said when summer comes. I'm not sure.
I told you we weren't done with snow yet. So.
The days of 3 seasons a day,
That's right, three season days, yeah.
How many citizens are participating this year?
About 22.
So it's less than last year.
I don't know what last
I don't
year
know what
was.
Don't remember.
Last year, the room was overflowing.
Yeah, so I just taught it on Tuesday, and it was pretty full.
It does vary, though. We've done that Citizens Academy for 5 years, 4 years, 4 or 5,
I think.
6 years. And it does bounce up and down. I've seen the room overflow, and then I've seen 20. So
Here I did it, there were only about 20.
I think that's because you were in it, probably. People were like, "I'm going with Rick."
It was the first year, it was new.
Oh, okay.
Tell yourself that.
Welcome back, Rick.
Obviously, they missed you.
We did miss him.
We made additional donations to local softball and baseball teams and to Grace Lutheran. We are currently, we will be making a donation to an Ada County deputy that was recently injured when he was involved in an incident on I-84 There were severe injuries to him, and we will be making a donation to his recovery efforts. The union will also be using our department grill, and we will be grilling for the ISU football team this Saturday also.
Police grill football team.
Hey, that grill is awesome.
You do a
It's
lot
awesome.
of food on it.
Yes, yes, we can. Different things that we've done that have been above and beyond. On April 8th, officers from Days B shift, these are the officers that work our weekend shift, and 2 off-duty K-9 officers went up to Reed Gym and visited and played basketball with the attendees of it's called Hoop.Camp, the basketball camp. It is a basketball camp that caters to individuals and children with special needs. This opportunity was a result of a traffic stop between Officer Namahala and the operator of a vehicle, Mr. Steve Garrett. After the interaction between the officer and the gentleman, they had a conversation, and he mentioned that participants would love to have the officers came up. And so many of them went up on Saturday. They were in uniform and visited with the participants and played a little hoop. So they all enjoyed it. It was a great time.
Not all traffic stops end bad then.
Yes, it was a very positive interaction.
I don't know, I'm not gonna ask that question. It's one of those don't ask, don't tell things right there.
Was
so.
it in lieu of a ticket?
In our efforts for retention and recruiting, on March 16th, members attended the Idaho State University Tech Expo at Holt Arena. The event allowed members to visit with hundreds of students about their careers in law enforcement and the support divisions of the Pocatello Police Department. On March 28th, we participated in the 7th annual Shoshone-Bannock Job and Resource Fair. It was held out at the Shoshone-Bannock Event Center, and it was a great turnout and provided opportunities to share information about the jobs that we have at the Pocatello Police Department. Since our last quarter, we have had several retirees from the department: Lieutenant Trent Whitney, Officer Tim Underwood, and Sergeant Ralph Daniels, and Will Brown left after serving 16 years with our department. Going forward, our union looks forward to future events in the community. We're planning to participate in various fundraisers on the 4th of July celebrations, and we will also be having our first annual Portneuf Valley FOP Pig Roast fundraiser. It will be held on June 24th. It will be at Grace Lutheran. It will run from 5 until 10-ish. There will be food and entertainment at this, and there will be a silent auction for fundraising efforts.
Could you say the date and time again?
June 24th, and it starts, I believe, at 5 p.m., and we have entertainment comedians starting at 7. Thank you. So I do thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
No question, just a statement for both you and the fire department. I don't know that people really realize how lucky we are in this community for the things that you do, the police and fire. You interact and do what's right. This is what's right about the police and fire world. This is what's right about it. I don't think you see it across the nation like we have it here. We're blessed, and it's because of what you guys do. And I truly can't thank you enough. It's unseen, right? The people that you touch see it, but not everybody out there sees it, and yet you're not looking for recognition. You're just doing what's right, and I truly, truly appreciate that. Thank you so much. I don't really have anything more to say. I'm just, I'm proud to be part of this community for what you guys do. Thank you.
Absolutely. Stephanie, you skipped over something I thought is pretty important. It's an amazing accomplishment that our dispatch center has achieved this last year. And you just kind of said, we have a dispatch week and away we go. Mm-hmm. And I think it's because of things that Councilmember Marchand just talked about. You're not looking for recognition and stuff, but I think it's important for the community here to hear what dispatch has accomplished and the significance of that. Can you just speak a little bit about the ACE certification that dispatch has and has achieved, and a little bit about it. Why it's such a big deal.
So the ACE certification is an award that is given out by the International Association of Emergency Dispatch. It is an organization that is used worldwide for dispatching. We use it and are certified here in a medical aspect. So we use the program to provide the best possible patient care that we can through the community. It has broken down into a variety of symptoms that we can ascertain from the callers, and then determine the best quality of care, from response to notifications to pre-arrival instructions. We are all trained in various aspects of abdominal thrusts, CPR. We can deliver babies over the phone using our voices. It goes through a stringent quality assurance process. We have 5 quality assurance, they're called queues, that pull calls. They go through, we are graded. We have to achieve a certain high percentage of calls that meet a high quality, it's called a high compliant or compliant level on our medical calls, and we have to maintain that over a period of time to achieve the ACE certification. Our agency has been working very hard over a number of years to achieve this certification. There are only, I believe, a little over 300, I'm not sure on the exact number, over 300 agencies in the world that have this certification. We are the first and only agency in the state of Idaho to currently hold this certification. And we have 5 dispatchers. I believe Captain Anderson will also be attending to receive that award at the Navigator Conference this year.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah. Just a little over, not quite a year ago, I spent a night in dispatch. Came in about 9 o'clock, and I was lucky to have Stephanie there as the lead dispatcher that night. And I saw that system work. Steph got a call from Lava Hot Springs and did an absolutely amazing job of saving somebody from death. The guy was dying laying on a bed in Lava Hot Springs, and what she went through and what she did brought the guy back. You guys ought to all go do that. Spend a few hours in dispatch some evening. I can't remember if it was a Friday or a Saturday night I went. It was an interesting night to sit there and actually get on the headphone and have a chance to listen to the calls, listen to both sides of the conversation, and see what happens down there. They also had an incredible night of food that night that I was there also.
You're supposed to leave that part out.
But it really is an experience I would encourage council to do. Take a night to go down and spend a few hours in dispatch. I think I was there from 9 to about, they got really quiet after about 1:30 in the morning.
Don't ever say that.
And well,
Those are fighting words there.
yeah. So I finally, after nothing happening for an hour or so, I finally went home about 3 o'clock. But I would really encourage council to go down there and spend a little time and listen to what happens in dispatch and recognize that dispatchers are the real first responders in every emergency incident.
Thank you. And we do. We come, put a headset on, sit down with us, look how the system works, see the technology that we have, the things that we do. Some of the software that we do have and work as dispatchers that are behind the scenes that nobody knows about. We've got Rapid SOS, we're preparing to launch Prepared Live, which will give us just ways to locate people, communicate with people, use their cell phones to help us determine exactly what's going on when they're in danger. So I do. Every one of you, please come down. We'd be more than happy to throw a headset on to you and allow you to see what we do. It's a lot of fun, and we enjoyed Rick having come in, and it means a lot to us. It really does when you come in. And
If I could follow up, one thing that amazed me that night, Stephanie got the call, and the call came in, and the guy was frantic on the other end of the phone. And while she was talking to this guy, one of the other dispatchers, without even being asked, was sending emergency services down there while she was busy engaged on the phone with the guy on the phone call. The cooperation and what happens in that dispatch center is, frankly, I was amazed at how well it all works together.
Awesome. Corey?
You are awesome. I just want to say that it's amazing to hear such high accolades and to think of just how impactful you are, and people don't even realize like how amazing of a job you guys are doing. And I applaud you personally for that. And just want to say thank you, first off. Second off, where do you hide the cape? You know what I mean? Like you guys are superheroes, and people don't acknowledge that. But thinking about this, it makes me think of that level of work. It'd be hard not to take it home, right? And so thinking about like mental health and stuff like that, is that something that we track or we monitor or pay attention to heavily in that area? Because that's a heavy ask and a heavy thing to carry around, that kind of a burden.
Yes, we do. When I recruit, and I will recruit anybody, I will go to another agency and I list out, I said, are you ready for because I can list out the benefits that we have. The Pocatello Police Department, I think statewide, I have the opportunities to meet with many other agencies. I help coordinate the Dispatch Academy over at Post Academy, so I am able to talk. The employee assistance program that the Pocatello Police Department offers is second to none. With our internal TIC teams that we have that help on incidents to the help that we have after is absolutely amazing. In our recent OIS, or officer involved shooting, I happened to be a part of that. I was on that day. There were 3 of us. There was a representative from our team that was sent down just to sit and dispatch. There were team members that came down to assist the officers just to make sure that we were okay. They come down, they check on our mental health. Are we okay? Do we need to get additional staffing in to help just so you can get off the floor? They followed and continue to follow up with us. There are required employee assistant programs and visits that are required of us after every incident, and there's also debriefs that they provide for us, both for the incident and to help with our mental health. The Pocatello Police Department, and with the support of the council and the city, again, we are second to none with how we care for our officers.
So my next question goes to the additional staffing. How is staffing? Are we good there, or?
We are building. I currently have one of our trainees, Alex Rodriguez, Andres Rodriguez, I apologize, we call him Alex. He's moved here from California, doing an amazing job. We have one member, one of our part-timers that's off on maternity leave, and I believe we have another 1 or 2 positions open. So we're getting there.
In dispatch.
In dispatch.
Yeah.
In dispatch. That's for us. We're closer than we've been in a long time. So that's appreciative.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Linda?
I just want a real quick thank you too. I mean, everybody has said everything that I already was thinking and feel about you guys, but you do a tremendous job. And you do a great job in your jobs, but also all the extra things you do in the community is above and beyond, and it's just tremendous. Both unions, the work that you do in the community that many people don't even realize is wonderful, and I appreciate that. And I have a question. Do you call him A-Rod?
That was one of the things, and he says he was a well-done firefighter before. And he said he has been called that before. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
He's a great addition to our team.
Good.
Sounds good. Zach, you've had a lot to say this morning. Do you have a presentation, or?
No, she did a great
Okay.
job. I'm just here for emotional support.
I
I would like to reiterate, Council Member Cheatham, that I've been told that I think my numbers are a little bit off. We're about 30 for that Citizens Academy, plus or minus, which is about the perfect size that we want to teach. But along with what Stephanie Harris said in reference to inviting you to dispatch, we'd love everyone to come to that Citizens Academy. Anytime we can increase communication and participation, we love having you, and we appreciate you as members of the City Council and Mayor. So.
Perfect. Okay, super. Thank you very much. Thank
The
you.
night at
Thank
the
you.
range is something to be experienced, guys.
That's true.
Can you rectify it for just a moment?
Better than going with you?
I just want to ask about the tone system. If we heard anything from,
Chief, have we heard anything about the toning system? I've got a question about the toning system that we know there's an issue with. Sorry, Christine.
sorry. This was my fault for the record.
If you'd
happy to
note
answer the
that,
question.
please.
They'll
Bold letters.
Still an ongoing problem, still not. They did just update the consoles in the dispatch center 10 days ago. And my understanding is that we have not had a failure since then. And so while we were looking at the infrastructure in the stations, we're going to monitor and see whether or not that may have taken care of some switch or, I'm not a radio person, so, but happy to report that in the last 10 days, we haven't had a failure. But prior to that, we were getting 1 to 2 failures a week, so.
So with the county, did we hear anything back from them on we're willing to help out if it comes to it, or?
We did not, no. There does not seem to be that willingness.
Okay.
Councilmember.
911 monies? Controlled by the county, but 911 monies?
Claiming did not have the funding for that project, that size of a project, because of the commitment to the consoles that's expended, kind of their, that's the project they're funding right now, and my understanding is that's a 5-year funding mechanism, that they have some sort of 5-year payment plan on those consoles that we just installed, so.
So the consoles that we've gotten here at the Pocatello PD?
Correct.
That
I
they were
think-
supposed to get like 6 years ago, that they just got, correct?
Yes.
That's
Stephanie's
right. Well, and I'm just saying that those consoles were put off and put off and put off. So there's an issue with the 911 money, and I have a problem with that. I also have a problem with this tone, if we're gonna watch it and watch it and watch it, and yet it's not fixed. We need to know that it's fixed. If it's not fixed, then we need to do something, because it's gonna cost somebody in their life an issue, right? If we can't get it out, and then it's just, I've got a problem with it. I've got a problem with how long it takes to get things done around here, and we need to look into this further. This is something that we need to get done, and it's not just a city problem, it's a county problem, and the county needs to talk to us, right? We can't continue to carry everybody and everything, and we need to get it right. I don't know how to do that. I'm willing to talk to them, but we need to do something.
Mr. Mayor, may I add to that? This year in the legislature, there was a resolution passed that ordered the Department of Health and Welfare to do a statewide study of the EMS system across Idaho. And this is one of the things that's going to be considered is communications. And that report is due in November or December of this year. So there may yet be solutions that will be statewide to solving this, or at least a plan as to how to go forward to solve that problem.
Good. I just don't know that we can wait till November
Yeah.
or December. I mean, as we watch this thing, it's, there's enough that can go wrong between the call coming in and the call and getting people to the right location. We don't need to add to it with stuff that we already know about, right? We know about that. So to me, that's a liability. At this point, we're looking at a liability. And it's not just us. Again, I say it's not just us. The ambulance service is run by the county. The county has a little bit of liability here too, but they're going to look at us and say it's coming out of the city of Pocatello. That call and those tones are coming out of here. Those tones are only used, right, for fire and ambulance. So I just think those are things that we need to address.
I appreciate that, and I'll continue to keep you updated on how often that's happening and try to find some solutions. And also continue to engage with the county on that, because I agree, I think it's a shared responsibility.
Well, it's huge, so.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, we'll move now to agenda item number 6. pre-awarded application for Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant EECBG program. Why we keep throwing these acronyms is beyond me. Planning and Development staff will be present to brief the council on the notice of intent published by the Department of Energy allocating $118,810 to the city of Pocatello.
Okay. Mayor, Council, Christine Howe, Grants Manager, and I do want to say that this presentation and a lot of the information here was provided by Jen Flynn, who was unable to be here today, but Jen's been instrumental in helping the city kind of get to this point with this block grant program. Essentially, if it has an acronym, you can expect to see me here. So the Department of Energy released some funding through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the BIL. I like to affectionately call it the bill. So essentially, the federal government is putting a ton of money into different federal agencies, and they're distributing those funds either as competitive grants or some appropriated funding. Because Pocatello has a population over 35,000, we are eligible for this formula grant, which is $118,810. In order to receive the formula grant, we do need to submit a pre-application, which is what I'm here before you today in regards to. The pre-application is due April 28th. And so the purpose of this funding is to essentially improve energy efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So you can see there are kind of three major areas down at the bottom in that graphic of what they're aiming to do with this money. But this will allow the city to conduct different programs or use the funds for different purposes, including potentially doing building energy audits, financial incentive programs, energy efficient retrofits, and so on. The funding is pretty flexible. They've added quite a few eligible activities, so we can kind of use it for what we need it for. And you can go through these and see the 14 kind of eligible activities, but we have a pretty broad range of what we can use this nearly $120,000 for. In order to accept the funds, we need to submit this pre-application. That will then allow us to enter into their grant portal to download the full application. So the process here is I want to come before you to get your feedback as to the program area that you would think we'd want to apply for. If the pre-application is approved for submission, then I can get into the grant application portal, put the grant application together, and come back before you with that. So seems like, a kind of extensive process for money that we're allowed, allocated to get automatically, but this will allow us to kind of ensure that we're doing this in the right steps with DOE and before you. So there's 4 general areas of programs. 3 of them are related to vouchers. So essentially we can apply to receive a voucher or essentially a reimbursement for one of these 3 areas that include technical assistance, and that would be to say hire a consultant to do some planning or programming or modeling. Equipment, so if we were to purchase a new HVAC system or heat pump, put in windows, doors, LED lights, we could submit for an equipment rebate, or you could do a combination of those 2 things. The 4th program area that you can submit is for a grant. So essentially get the funds as a grant and follow one of these blueprint topics that they have available to do some more kind of in-depth work on what exactly the city's plan for energy efficiency would be. So in this, you could do some building energy audits and retrofits. You could look into sourcing renewable energy for the future, potentially upgrade transportation or any workforce development activities. So the difference between the voucher and the grant really is the voucher, you have a project in mind that you want to do, that you're going to get reimbursed for, whereas the grant is you have a general idea of what you want to explore and then use the funding for. And so we'd like your feedback as to whether we should pursue more of the voucher option or the grant option. On the pre-application, I can select voucher or grant, but that doesn't tie us into either one. That can be, discussed further if we receive additional feedback before the final application submission. But this will help me determine what to start completing for the full application once I get into that magical portal that they have online to get the actual application to fill out.
Okay, Christine, I've got a question from council members Lurick, then Mansfield, then Mangum, and then Nichols. Anyone else want to get in line? Cheatham.
Throw Marchand in there too.
Okay, Marchand will be the last. Nothing from Marchand.
He's already met his quota. Thank you for bringing this forward. This is exciting. And I was just thinking about these options, and my gut feeling is go for the grant option because it gives us more flexibility of what we might want to do with it. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that. You said that the voucher option is if you have something specific in mind, and I was thinking, do you have something specific in mind, or that would be ready to go for that, or?
We have not yet identified a project that would
Okay.
be kind of ready to go. And for the amount of funding, it's unlikely that it would go very far. So suppose you had to replace an entire HVAC system in one of the municipal buildings, the $118,000 likely
Be a
won't get
drop.
you there. It could provide for some upgrades. We did look at, I believe there was a study done in 2010 or, before I was here, maybe a decade ago. Chevron came in and did some studies of municipal buildings to look at ways to improve their energy efficiency. We reviewed that, and there was nothing sort of concrete that didn't need to be updated. That would have to be redone to be able to say, yeah, City Hall needs 20 banks of LED lights installed.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of at a point where we don't specifically have a project called out, which would make the voucher option not impossible, but as you stated, the grant option is a little more flexible, so we could do the building energy audit and then identify where those expenses were, or go forward with an equipment rebate if we wanted to.
Because that was my thinking too. I mean, it's been a while, but I've read the 2008 Chevron report, and I don't recall anything specific in terms of project recommendations that we would now say, yeah, let's do that. So hearing what you've said, I like the flexibility of the grant option. That would be my preference here.
Councilmember Mangum. Oh, I'm sorry, Mansfield.
Does either option change? Well, okay. The funds are allocated to us. We don't get put in a different pool of competitiveness or anything based on which option we choose. Are there restrictions in terms of time frame as to when it needs to be allocated and spent that are differing for voucher or grant option, or is there just one universal time frame?
It's the same, what they call period of performance.
Okay.
So I believe that might be later in the slide. I think it's 2 years. The reporting requirements are a little more intensive for the grant option, but that's kind of my job, so I'm not worried about that.
So is it 2 years to have it spent?
I believe that's, 2 years. I'll have to double check on that period of performance. Most grants are typically a 2-year timeframe.
So for, and kind of what you highlighted, the HVAC system is the first thing that came to my mind when looking at this. That is a project that probably would, both in cost and time frame, extend beyond the scope of just this grant.
Right, unless you had one identified for, say, next year's fiscal year, if there was a building, a municipal building that needed the system and it was programmed into the budget, then we could use that voucher option. Otherwise, you'd probably want to go with the grant option to be able to identify and do all of the pre-work that goes into some of those blueprint topics.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mangum.
So this is only for municipal buildings, correct?
You can do a number of things. It's pretty flexible, so I'd have to confirm. I don't think you could do any private facilities, but you could look into things like partnering with renewable energy suppliers and those kinds of types of agreements or studies. So it wouldn't be just limited to, a capital expenditure on a municipal building.
Okay. So, golly, I just lost it. Never mind.
That's okay.
Not that old. Councilmember Nichols.
This question's maybe for anybody that can answer, but have we done an energy audit on this building?
So that Chevron study that was referenced by Councilmember Lurick did include this building in that energy audit, but it was more of a higher level energy audit. It wasn't in depth, so it didn't result in saying you need XYZ measures installed to result in this net savings. It was more of a broad level analysis of the buildings.
Right. So does anybody know the age and the efficiency of the HVAC system here? I mean, I'm guessing it's pretty old and.
Well, it's old and not non-efficient. We know that.
Yes, we know a lot
If
about
that's what you're
that.
asking, we know that it is.
It's attached.
Yeah.
Right.
Judging by the number of space heaters under the cube desks, it's probably not as
So
efficient
perhaps
as
that-
it could be.
Perhaps that could be a good use for the funding.
And that's an option here with this grant that we had considered is doing the building energy audits for the municipal buildings. And essentially you'd have an outside company come in and do that analysis and then tell you, okay, if you replace, these lights and this system over these years, you'll have this much savings. And so it really does that kind of deep dive report. I've done this with previous cities, and it just lays out a matrix of how you can get to that more efficient, like weatherization and energy efficiency through these building energy.
So are you
audits.
talking about using the funds to do the report or to use them to provide the actual HVAC, say, or infrastructure, or both?
The report, I don't think it would be sufficient funding for the actual replacements and upgrades themselves, since it's only $118,000. But knowing the direction that these federal funds are going, I think we can anticipate more grant opportunities to come up, especially through DOE with the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. It seems like most of the formats of these grants are they have funding available for 5 years. You spend the first year doing planning, and then the next 4 years you can apply for some capital funds. So that seems to be the direction these agencies are going, which is a potential use of this $118,000.
Okay. And Councilmember Mangum remembered what he used.
So if I heard you right, sorry, if I heard you right, so for the pre-application, you can throw in grant or voucher, but we're not stuck to that.
Correct.
Down the road, you can be like, actually, we're going to go the grant, not the voucher and whatnot.
In the down the road is a little bit sooner, so the application
Like
is
tomorrow.
due in July.
Okay.
So it would allow me to get into the actual portal to then start completing the application. And we do want direction as to whether we should complete that application with the voucher in mind or the grant in mind. And then that would be presented to you in May or June for approval if you wanted to pursue these funds.
And you probably won't make friends if in June you say, actually, we want to change our mind.
Absolutely.
Okay, and Linda.
I just wanted to follow up on that, the idea of using the grant funds to do a deeper dive, another energy audit, but thinking about the Chevron audit that you've mentioned was 2008, so that's already quite a while ago. I think it would be a really good idea to do a new report and maybe a deeper dive, as you said, rather than that sort of high level thing and because the money isn't enough to go very far for the equipment. I think that is needed. Obviously we've heard a lot about our system here and it's not in great shape, but it wouldn't go very far with that. So I think it would be better to use the funds to do a broader report and look at what our needs are and what we can do.
Council President Cheatham.
Mr. Mayor, we have a group that's been studying ways to get us more energy efficiency. I think Jeff has been leading that group. So I'd like to call him to the dais if he would come and talk to us and see if there are any easily pluckable fruits from what they already know that we could use this $118,000 and actually get something done instead of studying it.
Yep.
I think that's what this is.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Jeff Mansfield, Public Works Director. So thank you, Councilman Cheatham, Council President Cheatham. Yeah, so we have looked at various options and availabilities. We did somewhat of a base level audit of some of the different facilities and got some recommendations, but really for us to come and identify concrete projects, I think we need to do a deep dive repeat of the Chevron study that was done. Above and beyond that, I know some things that were identified in this grant were, purchasing some electric vehicles, charging stations, things like that. Those are some things that could be done. We could add some solar panels on different facilities. Those are also some ideas that we could follow.
I'm just not in favor of studying this project to death. I think we got an opportunity for $118,000 to actually do something instead of sitting down and spending it on an engineering firm to study what needs to be done, and then we don't have the funding to do it anyway. $118,000 isn't a lot of money, but it would certainly go some ways toward whether it's WPC or a water building, the annex, this building, the senior center, the buildings that we own. That money would go a long ways toward changing lighting, HVAC systems, or other kinds of easily accessible energy efficiencies.
Okay. Councilmember Mangum and then Nichols.
So Jeff, is there anything that 118,000 can touch now and that can get completely cleared up?
Again, you could do some solar panels, you could do some vehicles and some charging stations. I don't know the exact numbers on how many you could do or things like that, but those are things that definitely probably would fall in that category.
I don't want it to be a waste of funds, right? So we take the 118 and then we have this minimal thing that we've created, but it really doesn't scratch the surface of creating energy efficiency, right? So the study would kind of give us that to show like this is legitimately where you are right here, right now, versus we put in a charging station, we've got the one station and it's not really doing much good, if that makes sense. But I do agree, I would love to see something tangible.
We should clarify that the building energy audits that we're talking about do create, it's a concrete set list of what you need to do for the building. So right now, as Jeff mentioned, the Chevron study doesn't have that concrete list and we don't have that concrete list. So we don't know what a building like WPC needs or the city hall or the rec center. So the building energy audit is where they go in and they say, you need to weather strip those 4 doors using this material. You need to replace 10 banks of LED lights. And so it gives you that concrete breakdown with pricing. So you know exactly how much to make that building more efficient. And then shows, a net yield on savings, hopefully through energy and weatherization. So that's what the building energy audit is. You can do general studies for the city in terms of like a long-term plan, but it sounds like, the building energy audit itself is a concrete list of things that you have to do. Those just do cost quite a bit of money, and the 118,000 could go toward the majority of the municipal buildings. Alternatively, you could pursue one on one building and then try to implement some of those actions if that was preferred. But the grant would allow for that, the voucher would not.
So I've got council members Nichols, Mansfield, and then Mangum again, so.
Yeah, I'd just like to concur with Council President Cheatham. I'd be more comfortable using these funds for hard projects as opposed to just studying this to death.
Mansfield.
I think I dissent a little bit on that though, because especially if over the next 5 years we have more funding that we are expecting will become available for competitive grants, I think to have a list of projects, identified costs, and what we need to achieve it, I think puts us in a much better position to achieve those grants down the future and access more monies moving forward. And I worry that by spending this money on something tangible that could be very good, that we may not be in a position to capture the monies please correct me if you think I'm in error there, but just from what I'm interpreting of what you're saying, having that kind of building audit with costs and checklists, including things like HVAC, when more of those monies become available, if we have cost breakdown, time frame, project exactly, fill that out for a grant application, would that increase our chances of getting more money in the future?
If you have the plan and the projected costs, it makes it much easier to apply for those. And again, with this today, we're looking at approval to either submit for the voucher or the grant. That doesn't tie us in. So what we could do is we could submit the pre-application and then look at what that application kind of entails. And if it's a heavy lift to prepare it one way or the other, we could try to prepare it for a hard cost project through the voucher and also the grant, and present both of those to the council if that's preferred as kind of a way to look at it. And again, doing the grants doesn't prevent you from doing a hard project. It just, you follow one of these blueprint topics and it's a bit more reporting. And vouchers is more streamlined if you have something you know of absolutely in mind that you want to put the money toward. So.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, we've got Councilmember Mangum, and then it sounds like Lurick,
And Cheatham.
and then Cheatham.
So I was going to jump the gun and just ask if you're ready for a motion. Josh asked all my questions, and I agree 100% that I don't want to take a shot in the dark. It'd be great to have some specifics on exactly what we need to get done, what the cost is going to be, and to make a move from there. But and so the grant thing to me is a great idea, and to kind of do a study. But
Okay, Lurick, and then Cheatham.
And I just want to agree with what Councilmember Mansfield said, and disagree with the idea that we're studying to death, because we have a study from a while ago, but even though, I mean, in addition to being old, it also didn't go into the detail that we need. And so I think the better way to use this money, since it isn't enough money to really have a big impact on any one project, I think it's important to use this now to identify very specific things so that then we can be more likely to apply for other money or be ready to allocate other money to getting those things done. But I think this is an opportunity to really come up with a detailed list of what our needs are. And it'll go further as a study to it, rather than addressing like one building or one need of one building. This will identify many needs across our properties. So I would be very in favor of going with a grant and using it that way. But I also liked your proposal of coming back and sort of showing us specifically what the options would entail. But my lean is towards a grant to do a more in-depth study and identify specific projects that then we can begin to address systematically.
Council President Cheatham.
Well, I'm against studying. I think there's a time and place for that, but with $118,000, we can make some differences today. We can take that money immediately, and I think we can walk through any building the city owns and find things like weather stripping and lighting, and it wouldn't take a $118,000 study to say that's going to increase the efficiency of the building. It will have an immediate effect on the amount of money we spend and the tax ask we have every year of our citizens. We can make a difference. And I think you're going to see less and less federal funding when this Bill Act expires, as you saw with the decrease in CDBG money. I don't think that flow is going to continue. The federal government has a money problem that they haven't solved, and I think you're going to see less and less of these kind of funds in the future. I think spending $118,000 on the hope that down the road we may have additional money to spend to do these kind of projects is a wish and a prayer. We need to take these funds that we know we can get, jump in, and get something done.
Councilmember, who?
He was first.
Okay, Councilmember Marchand, and then Mansfield.
I guess part of it is I understand the study issue, but I have to agree with Council President Cheatham, because I know that right now I could take that $118,000 and walk over to the senior center and spend it all, right? That building that is owned by the city is, provides a great service, but it's in disrepair, right? That's a building that you could walk over today and they need HVAC help, they need window help, they need door help, they need help on all of these things. So for me, I would rather do that, spend it where we can use it on some of these buildings. It's $118,000, which is crazy to me to go, that's not a lot of money. But in our world, that's not a ton of money. And use it versus doing the study. I just think, I guess my personal thing is at this point, you're not asking for what do you want to do with the money. I'm just saying, it would be my vote to go for the grant at this point and then figure out where we're going to go with the money after we know whether we're getting it or not. Then we have to make that decision, but we have to make it quickly.
Mansfield?
What would the cost be to do an energy audit of this building?
I'm
Rough.
not sure on that.
Of just this building?
Yeah.
You're probably $25,000.
I would be open to doing an audit of this building and then considering using the rest of the funds for projects that have been spoken of. But I've been on council for a little over a year now. And in that time, anytime we talk about building repairs, we talk about the HVAC system in this building. And then we ask how much it's going to be. And the answer is, we're not sure. We ask how long is it going to last? And the answer is, we're not sure. I think if we want to meaningfully prepare for a project like the HVAC system in this building, we have to do something to get the answers there. Like, I need to be able to ask, how long do we have until this HVAC system needs to be replaced? How much should we be saving? How much is going to cost? We have to have answers to that. And I think that $25,000 would be an amazing use of that money to have answers for this building, at least on that HVAC system. So I would be interested in doing this building's audit, an energy audit, and then considering using the rest of the money, whether it be for the senior center or other projects. I think that would be a good split and compromise, but advances I think an important resource that we need of this building.
Don't hold me to that $25,000.
Sure.
Just kidding.
You threw that out there with confidence, and now you're saying it's backing up. I noticed that backpedaling.
But even if it's up to 50,000, right? I mean, you could still, based on things we're talking about, make some good changes with an extra $68,000 if 50,000 of it could prepare us for needs that I have heard for a year and a half are going to be coming up in this building, but I haven't gotten solid answers on what they look like.
Council President Cheatham.
One more time. I don't think we need to spend $50,000 to an energy audit. I think we get a hold of Richard, have him ask some contractors to come in and give us a bid. And we don't have to spend 50 grand to do that.
Cost anything.
That's who's going to do the work down the road anyway. They can look at this building. They can look at the equipment on the roof. They can look at the insulation, the delivery systems, and the ducting in this system, and give us an answer. And it won't cost us a dime. I don't think we need to spend $25,000 or $50,000 or whatever it might cost to get that done. But I agree with the grant proposal. Let's do the grant, and then let's make a decision as to how we're going to spend the money.
I was just going to say, it sounds like as you move forward, with your question that you have for us today, is the grant is probably what the council is, everybody's spoken a little bit different thing, but the grant has been the one common. So,
I don't know.
are we good
Yeah.
with that?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay, we can move forward with submitting the pre-application for the grant. And like I said, once that's submitted, I'll have access to the actual grant application. And we can do a little more research on potential project cost to see what that $118,000 can go toward for either a concrete project or the cost of building energy audits citywide or on individual
because it'll come
buildings.
back in front.
Try to do a little more research ahead of the actual grant application, approval, and submission, which will be in July.
With that, Bert, could you also bring some suggested projects of what we could get the most value out of for that money?
Yeah, we can reach out to department heads and
Great.
look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, so you got the direction that you
I
were
do
looking
have the
for
direction.
today. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is an action item. Do we need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion. We just needed a direction, I think is what it was really, Christine's really looking for. And so I think we've got that.
And we did put this on next week's council meeting for formal action for submission of the pre-app. And then we'll come before you at a council meeting in May or June for the application submission.
Councilmember Nichols?
So what would it take to just get some bids on replacing the
I just
HVAC
wrote
here?
Richard down here, so I'll get with Richard and tell him that we need something.
Yeah, get hard
It
money bid?
won't be by next week, I'm sure, but by next week, we just have to do the pre-approval, have the motion for the pre-approval stuff and go from there.
Got it, thank you.
Okay?
Okay,
All right? All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, council, before we adjourn, and I'm ready, just before we adjourn, I visited with Sherry Matson back here and Lisa Armio. They wanted to introduce themselves to the council and give a treat, I think is what I was told. And so I'm hoping there's some kind of good food in this. And so if you would come up here really quick, you're not on the agenda, so just please make it really quick. You're going to introduce yourself. Okay, you don't need, okay, then that sounds great. Then I'd be, I'm about ready to.
Mr. Mayor, before we adjourn, I'd like to have added to a future agenda the Ross Park slide and the pickleball courts
Okay,
for a discussion.
okay. All righty, I'll get that probably in a month, probably is when we'll see that. Okay, all right, council, thank you very much, and everybody, thank you for attending today. With that, we are adjourned. And council.